So Destiny is not 60 frames per second. Wow. Wow. Damn. Well, to clarify more easily, just a while ago I was going to get Destiny for Christmas, and I still am, and I'm really loving that game. But then I found out something really extreme about the game that really almost changed my mind about getting the game in the first place. But then I knew that it ran smoothly, yada yada yada, but not 60 frames per second. Whatever. So, of course, in every single YouTube video, unless you have an Elgato Capture 60 HD, you cannot see videos in 60 frames per second on YouTube. So, I had expected that that was the problem with these YouTube videos on Destiny. So, I was like, okay, probably running at 60 frames per second, but just on 30 frames in the YouTube video because these guys don't have Elgato 60 FPS HD game capture cards or whatever. Apparently that wasn't the case, because when I wanted to find out if it did run at 60 frames per second, I looked up a 60 frames video, which did have 60 frames per second on YouTube because YouTube gave me the option, and it still ran the same exact way. The only way I could test that this was 60 frames per second was going to my friend's house and testing out the game, in which I did. And yup, the game ran smooth. It looked like it was 60 frames per second, but it wasn't. Oh man, wow. This is just some crap here. Oh my god. Oh, damn. So I looked more into this, and apparently the PS3, the Xbox 360, and the Xbox One and PS4 versions all run the same, though the next-gen consoles have it in better resolution. Why isn't it 60 frames per second? Well, the PS4 and the Xbox One can run it at 60 frames per second, but here's what Bungie had to say about the loss or the non-existent 60 frames per second. It's a lot of different things. I could get technical, but I'd bore you to death. A lot has to do with performance. We're cross-platform, so we had to be very delicate with all four consoles, making sure they have the same experience, that it looks as good as it possibly can on all these consoles. A lot goes into that, from geometry to textures to post effects to particles to how many players can get on the screen. We're always balancing that out to make sure everyone gets the same experience. Okay, that's good that you're thinking about the people who have the PS3 and the Xbox 360 and can't afford the next-gen consoles. It's good you're thinking about them. Really, you actually care. But what about the people that spent their hard-earned money to earn the Xbox One and the PS4? Don't you think you should reward them with at least a 60 frames per second game? I mean, it doesn't have to change anything. Almost no one cares about the frames per second, but some people do. Why don't you just favor them and then forget about everyone else? Just make the damn game 60 frames per second. It's all you have to do. You don't have to add new different things or add new stories or DLC to the next-gen consoles, because that'll make it unfair. 60 frames per second is what it should be able to run on the PS4 and Xbox One. If you claim they are the next-gen consoles, they should be able to do that. They shouldn't have no problem doing that. But the fact that you want to give everyone the same exact experience is not an excuse. Everyone wants 60 frames per second. Call of Duty Advanced Warfare had 60 frames per second. Everyone was so happy with that. Why couldn't you do the same for Destiny? It surprises me so much how companies look and care for the wrong things. People are not even noticing the fact that it has a loss of 60 frames per second. So, what was the point of even rewarding them with that? Oh yeah, we're going to make this 30 frames per second because we want you guys to care about it. No, they don't care. They don't even notice. So what you did to them was probably non-existent in their minds. But the people who do notice it in the next-gen consoles wanted a 60 frames per second game. It makes no sense what you did here. For Destiny players, or to all the people who love Destiny, wouldn't you have rather had a 60 frames per second game rather than 30 FPS? So what if it goes smooth? Just because it goes smooth doesn't mean it's 60 frames per second. Just because it goes smooth means that you decided to put little effort into it instead of making it 60 frames per second and getting on with your life. Bungie, you are a very, very good company, but you need to learn what to care about. So many people were expecting a 60 frames per second game, and because you wanted the PS3 and the Xbox 360 players to have the same exact experience is no excuse to make it 30 frames per second too on the next-gen consoles. If anything, you could have downgraded the graphics on the Xbox 360 and the PS3, and then made it 60 frames per second on those consoles, and then had put your full amount of effort into the next-gen consoles. Because people earned those systems, just like they earned those rights to have 60 frames per second and the rewards to have 60 frames per second. What you did here makes entirely no sense, and there's no reason you should care for the wrong thing. It's common sense. I hope you guys listen to your fans next time you make a new game. My name is Andy Reds from Gaz Gaming, and I'll be seeing you guys all later.